Well, thank you, Mark, and Richard and Jeff. Thanks for inviting me here. I'm really excited to work on my Minnesota accent and bring it back to Rochester. So when they asked me to give a talk this evening, I wasn't exactly sure what you wanted to hear about. So you're going to get the whole shooting match. Basically, I am a third-generation artist. And I became a professional artist at the age of 16, and that's all I've ever known, is just creating things. I enjoy working with my hands and just with whatever I can work with. And then, in my late teens, I guess, I saw a piece of veneer, highly figured wood, and fell in love with it. And although I have a design degree from RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology, and have taken a couple classes at the School for American Craftsmen, along with many workshops over the years, I'm primarily a self-taught woodworker, and with that, I pretty much had to figure things out myself, and I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've also developed a number of techniques that apparently aren't traditionally done, and I'll be showing some examples of that and teaching some of those techniques this weekend. So we'll talk about that, but what I want to do is bring you all the way back to the very beginning and show you some of my very early inspiration, because I found it, I gave a talk at Chautauqua Art Institute 10, 15 years ago, and they was like, when did you start doing this sort of style? And I kind of kept going back and further back and further back, and suddenly realized, it was quite an epiphany, that my early work represented my current work, although I didn't know the common theme going through there. So I'm going to quickly show you some of the very, very early work, which is not woodworking, it's sculpture and photography and what have you. And you'll see later on how those elements are incorporated into my current work. So with that said, do we want to leave these on too, or we just, I mean, I don't know if everybody can see the screen. Everybody can hear me okay? Okay, great. And it's that button? Okay. So again, this is early teens, if you will, just a collage. But one ongoing theme in my work is discovering inner beauty. I feel that every time you peel a layer back, something gets more beautiful. And this was not a conscious decision, really, until maybe 15 years ago when I gave this talk and I saw this common theme, and I was like, oh wait, that's what I've been doing, and I could finally identify with it and actually focus a little more on that. But you can see this small wall sculpture has this sort of inner soul. There's something deeper in, and then a little piece of silver on there is a little shimmer of light. Here's another piece. It's 1 square foot of wood with a couple thousand nails pounded into it. But again, there's sort of this interform. There's a cube with a sphere around the outside. So there's structure and texture. I did live on a mountain in the Catskills for 2 summers and built a log cabin. Again, I didn't know what I was doing, so it was an unconventional log cabin. It was actually 3 stories tall, hanging off of a cliff, and went off into a tree. And again, you'll see some of these elements in my current work. I've also been intrigued by natural patinas, and also what's behind that, meaning the weathering in time, and what time affects us all, right? So I've always been intrigued about that element. That actually was a maple syrup vat that I found in the woods and spent 3 hours with a pair of pliers ripping it apart. Here's an early pastel, and even with this, you can see sort of that center red area where it kind of goes back in there, and it seems to be something more than just the surface. I also enjoyed photography and contrasting human forms with texture. So there's some elements there that are also intriguing to me. I mean, who doesn't like human form, right? Especially naked women and guys for the ladies. I then spent 2 summers, but the first summer backpacking through Europe. and was very impressed about some of these structures that, again, took more than one generation to build. I mean, that's quite a commitment to building something, and you know you're not even going to see the finished product. And the craftsmanship behind that, with, back then, minimal tools, I was just blown away. In addition, some of these were under restoration, so they had this structure. Like, I'm always intrigued, like, how do they get that last stone on the very, very top, right? There had to be a whole other building or scaffolding around this structure. So I was always intrigued. When I look at buildings, I always sort of see this other structure around it. That was always very impressive to me. And you can see some of my early sculptures, the transition. This is actually a piece I did right after I came back. Spires were intriguing to me. And then my second year at RIT, I proposed an independent study where I wanted to learn human anatomy, right? The structure of our skeleton. And I wanted to learn blacksmithing. So I made this proposal and they said, sure. They just built a brand new forge and foundry facility, which I had all to myself. And they gave me a real skeleton because they have medical rendering or illustration as one of the courses. They gave me an actual skeleton, which I was able to take apart, sketch and analyze every single bone in the body, and I forged every single bone out of steel. Not thinking what I was going to do with this thing. So at the end of the year, it took me an entire year to do, I had this skeleton, you know, sitting on the wall, and I'm like, okay, like Frankenstein. And I was like, what am I going to do with it? What gesture? I really wasn't thinking. I was really just concerned about teaching myself the process. So I proposed myself this question: throughout history, what gesture, if you will, has been sculpted and sketched and drawn and painted more than any other gesture throughout time? So that's a question to you. Now, only 2 people have ever answered it correctly, so there's no pressure here. And it took me 2 weeks to think, you know, I proposed the question and ponder that question. Anybody want to give it a shot? Excuse me? That's the common answer, and that's probably the second one. But, right, the crucifixion, right? Well, I'm assuming everybody would agree with that. I mean, that's been drawn and painted to death, pun intended. So it then won an award and went to a show, and then actually shut the show down. Somebody was offended, and they closed the show and they wanted the piece removed. And that was for the first time that I was realized how powerful art could be. I didn't realize that, how, I mean, people intentionally shock people, but you can have a lot of emotion with your work. And I never said it was JC, right? I mean, who are the 2 poor suckers on either side of them, right? I mean, it could have been them, but somebody was offended, they made assumptions, and apparently, the way I hear it, Jesus didn't have bones after he, you know, got stuffed into the cave and floated away, and there was nothing left, right? And you know, I don't mean to insult anybody here. I'm a spiritual person, but I'm not a religious, so I don't know the whole storyline. But somebody was really offended by that. So that was a big shocker for me that somebody was that offended. So be it. So some other earlier pieces where I started thinking about structure and this sort of soul or inner beauty. So if you will, this is a 24 karat gold on black slate, and you can see the black slate sort of falling away, but the consistency of the soul remains. And I was commissioned by a couple of corporations to do large wall sculptures of those, which I didn't photograph. But that's a little maquette testing some things. And you can see some of my sculptures. Again, this is a burnt, I think, particle board with a chrome interior. So the interior is more beautiful than the exterior. That's a 4 feet by 4 feet, kind of a big cube. Other pieces, these are maquettes. You know, again, the pyramids sort of, you know, was sort of the spiritual sort of thing, and there's mystery behind that, and what's inside of them. And again, as you break it away, is there some, you know, secret to the universe? So that intrigued me. Again, we talked about the scaffolding and deteriorating pyramids, and, you know, playing with the scaffolding. Another piece. And then one day, you know, I was still relatively young and making sculpture, and selling sculpture is kind of a tough sell. People can't justify, unless it's an outdoor sculpture, people can't justify the floor space, right? So one day I decided, let's put a piece of glass on one of my sculptures, and voila, whoa, you know, functional art. Okay, and that was it. And then I actually started selling. I mean, coffee tables. It was great. So I then started taking a lot of my sculptures and putting glass on top of them, and they started to sell just from a functional standpoint. So I kind of just fell into this functional art. Here's another sculpture here, and again, you can still see this peeling away and inner beauty, and there's more inside of a piece. And you can put a piece of glass on it, and now it's a functional coffee table. And stools, again, you can see the pyramids and the spheres, lots of just, and again, I apologize for the quality of the photographs. This is all before digital and Photoshop, and I was just shooting off the hip, if you will. Little maquettes, again, coffee tables. So that's really how I started getting into that. Pedestals are still good. There's a bronze and that's a fiberglass and wood, and this you know, inner soul emerging through the deteriorated exterior. I'm gonna blow through a lot of these. So then one day I saw a piece of veneer, as I mentioned, and I fell in love with it, and I wanted to know everything there was to know about it. And like my skeleton project, I don't usually start off small. So this was literally my first veneered table. I wanted to learn how to hand cut and inlay veneer. So again, it's sort of a dining room table that's cracked open, and all this beautiful confetti is spilling out. And as it hits the edge of the table, it goes from flat into three-dimensional pieces. And I even took the ribbon and the veneer and came, and you can even see, I don't have a pointer, but there's little green dots. Those are actually gems. Those are green gems. You can tell I don't know my gems. And I really enjoyed this, and starting to look at veneer in a new way, where I love woods that you know they're wood, but you're not quite sure what kind of wood. At least at the time, I didn't know what burls were, or redwood burls, and had no idea what chatoyance was, which we'll talk about in a bit. So then reality hit. I had a couple kids, and I needed to make a living. So we had a lot of fun. But I had to get serious and come up with a line of furniture that I could sell, because I spent, I think it was 2 summers, going to New York City and trying to go to the furniture stores. You know, there's a D&D building that architects and designers go to, and you go down there and it's a whole building filled of, you know, Dakota Jackson and these other, you know, well-known furniture makers. But of course, if you go in, they won't take a cold call, so you got to get the card, you got to go home, write them a letter, then make an appointment, then go back down there, and they were saying, oh, your work is too artsy. So then you got to go, you need to be down in Soho. So then I would do the same thing, Soho, with galleries down there, wouldn't see me, and I did that down in the West Coast also. So I spent, you know, quite a bit of time and money just traveling back and forth, trying to get stuff placed and trying to come up with a line of furniture. And half the side was it's too commercial, the other side was saying it's too artsy, and it was a real dilemma. Plus, I had this theme, and I had different styles. Now for me, they're all spiritually, if you will, the same, this sort of inner beauty, and but they were aesthetically different. And they were saying, look, if you want to take this seriously, you need to come up with a line of furniture that is consistent. If you want to be collectible, it has to be recognizable. Someone has to be able to look at your work at a glance and say, oh, that's a Scott Grove. So you need to come up with a style. So I had a whole bunch of styles, as you could see, but I picked this particular style for my first line. Here's a coffee table. It's burled redwood on top. The outside is carved wood. I then copper coat the wood, and then I add a patina to it. And this one, actually, the burled redwood was too narrow. It wasn't long enough. So I had to splice on a piece. And this is where I actually developed my wavy contoured seam, which is everybody familiar with book matching, right? book match veneer, and typically for 6,000 years, veneer has been cut with a straight seam, pretty much. And when you have this beautiful grain, you always have this one line, and that line for me detracted away from it. I didn't want to see the seam, I wanted to see the wood, so I just said, well, why does it have to be straight? I guess I'm defiant, probably my mother has to do with that. But I said, well, let's just do a wavy seam. So I did that, and it allows me to add on to a piece of veneer. I did not book match it, and just allowed me to extend the piece of veneer to make this particular piece. And that was the beginning of sort of my, I don't know, pioneered techniques in this wavy contoured seam. So you can see there's a whole series here. Again, this is a wall shelf. I call this a welfare shelf because there's no visible means of support. And each time it cracks open, so it's like a geode, if you will, right? So you have a geode, you've cracked it open, you see something beautiful, you split it open again and open it up, it gets even more beautiful. And in fact, there's a drawer there. And it's an ongoing theme, but besides the theme, because most of the galleries couldn't care, aesthetically it was the same, right? There's a consistency on that line. Yin-yang tables, and then of course from there, started getting commissions for larger pieces of work. And
Scott, those last two pieces that you had,
yeah,
you had the veneer, I presume, on the top with the texture. So what is the texture?
The texture, it's stacked laminated, and then I carved it with a chainsaw.
Okay.
So that's a rough edge, and then I copper coat it. So another system I kind of developed is take powdered copper, real copper, I mix it in a binder, which allows me to spray it on. I mean, at first I was leafing, and that took forever, and brushing, but then if you thin it down enough, you can spray real copper on, and if you want to put a patina on it, you put your acid on while it's still wet, and or you can apply hand glazes. So there's a whole variety of techniques that I was experimenting with, but it's a real copper edge, if you will. And again, it's sort of that people not sure when they look at it. They're like, is this metal? Is it wood? What the hell am I looking at? And of course, I like to toy with is it real or not? Like people say, well, is that a real tree? Oh yeah, it's an Asian yin-yang tree, right? They grow together. Yeah, I have fun, but you're not quite sure. You almost might believe me, right? I mean, it looks almost real. So I like to kind of play. For me, it's curiosity. I think curiosity keeps us young, right? I mean, we have all the experience when you see something and you're not sure what the material is. And you go, wow, what is that? And it sucks you in, and you have to touch it and you taste it and pee on it. I don't know. What? And you're fascinated. What is this, right? And I just love that feeling when I see other people's work and you're just drawn in and you have to question, what am I looking at? Is this wood? Is it not wood? Is it metal? How is this made? How'd they do it? That always fascinates me, so I try to emulate that in my own work. Talked about some other commissions. Then, of course, on the side, now at one point I had a 10,000 square foot shop and up to 28 employees, so I was doing major shows all across the country and cranking this stuff out. So besides my own work, I would do commission work for interior designers and architects. And commercial work is obviously where the money's at. Do a lot of large conference tables. Like the bottom right-hand corner, that went to Washington, D.C., and I had to do 2 of those. Those are 18-foot conference tables in 9 days. So I got very good and very fast, and I'm always looking to new technologies. I don't know if anybody knows what the jet weld is. Now it's an older system, but it's a hot glue gun, but polyurethane. And they'll make these little glue guns that are polyurethane based. They set up in 2 minutes, so you can take a piece of wood. By the time you finish clamping it, it's done. You can take it off and immediately go ahead and machine it. So I had a larger commercial gun. It's pneumatically operated, but I think the little guns they're great. You can actually put a piece of wood, stick it on there, just hold it. And you can whack it with a hammer. It'll break your MDF or your substrate before the glue joint's stronger than the wood. So systems like that I took advantage of. But I also use these interior commercial opportunities to kind of implement my own work, as you see in the top right. So again, that's that sort of carved wood. That's again an 18-foot wall-mounted buffet, same sort of thing. So I was kind of trying to satisfy my artistic side where, you know, that geode concept. I don't mind doing other people's designs or working in other styles. You got to pay the bills. I mean, I am a full-time woodworker, and that's how I make my living. So you can't, you know, you can't say, oh, I don't do that. I mean, when you're trying to keep everybody busy. So then I started honing in on my, I guess, more successful line, which is a line of cabinets based on a 32mm system. Does anybody kind of know what that is? We got one person. Okay, so the 32mm system, you know your kitchen cabinets, you have a little series of holes, right? Everybody thinks they're for adjustable shelves. Well, if you properly place those holes, one, you can then throw away your tape measure, and the European hinges line up with those holes. Drawer hardware, all hardware now, or majority of the hardware now, has a system, what's called a system hole, which is a 5mm hole that's placed precisely for the 32mm system. The 32mm system was designed after World War II to rebuild all of Europe, and they had to come up with the system. And there's nothing magic about 32mm. At the time, it was the closest they could get 2 drill bits with the gears and the sprockets and everything. That's it. It's that simple. And based on that, if you place them centered on a panel, then your left panel is your right panel, and if you want to hang a door left side or right side, as long as the hinges are drilled in the right location, I teach this, but I won't get into that, but it's a fantastic system. The holes are set 37mm back, and the starting holes at 35, and there's a formula to it, but once you get those holes exactly in the right location, I can install a drawer in like 2 minutes. I can hang a door in 30 seconds. And if you don't like the door and you want to switch it, I can switch it in 15 seconds. So you can, all your kitchen cabinets are made this way. So I use that system and added my sort of artistic spin on it. So the cases, again, are chip carved, copper coated, contrasted with exotic veneers, but highly customizable. So if a client wants, you know, a dresser, and they could pick, you know, if they want big drawers on the bottom and the little drawers. I mean, we all have done this, the design time. You stand around scratching your head and drawing and redrawing and figuring out where all the slides are going to go. I've taken that all out. In fact, I do it in AutoCAD, and I have what are called blocks, which are pre-drawn drawers, and I just drag them, and my pick point is the 32mm hole, and I can also provide shop drawings. You know, it takes me 5 minutes to generate a set of customized cabinets based on this system. And then from there, we can mix and match any configuration you want. You can mix and match your wood and your veneers, right? Very simple, very fast. And from there, you can do a whole line of furniture. So this was really my first major line of furniture. In addition, the clients would, I'm going to jump forward here. I had a whole bunch of series of veneers and textures you could choose from. So it was really like a Chinese menu. Chinese menu, that's probably not PC. Asian, that's an Asian menu. What's the new? So you'd pick. I want this texture. I want that veneer. I want this size. I want a big drawer, a little drawer, or whatever, and I could knock this stuff out and customize it. And then from there, I started playing with veneers and the sapwood, because I enjoyed that and manipulating the sapwood as a design element. Now this is a simple book match, an end match to create that on the left-hand side there, but it intrigued me. So you'll see how that I started using that as a design element. Jump forward here. Oh, these are other. And then, of course, if you want to go totally crazy, you know, I could do that too. But again, the components are very, very quick to make. I had that. I could knock this stuff out very, very quickly.
Are the textured sides, is that MDF?
Let's back up. Oh, I'm screwing up. Hold on. Does it go back? I use MDF and/or solid wood. MDF does have a bad rap, right? Oh, MDF. Now, there's high quality MDF, which is engineered board, and Medex, which is a waterproof board, and you can get it in high density at 90 pounds. It's wonderful stuff. It carves well, it finishes well. So a lot of the pieces were originally MDF. I also use solid hard maple. I'm doing a piece right now for a client in Ann Arbor, and they want hardwood. I give the client a choice. I educate them because there's not the expansion and contraction, say that 3 times fast, issues that hardwood does have. And in fact, some of the early undermount concealed drawer hardwood didn't allow a slot. We'd have to actually drill them out. But now the grass and bloom hardware now have a slot, so you can, it will allow for that. But the early ones, I was having problems with that. So here's another one you can see, carved, a close-up. I also started incorporating gems. So amber, again, it's just, I love materials that go, wow, what is that? And the amber always intrigued me because of the time issue, right? Some of these elements that intrigued me in my early experimentations are starting to come in. I just love materials that draw you in. I also prefer to use veneers that are more unique. For example, that's quilted maple. So other pieces, early works, starting to play with, if you saw this in a museum, there might be a time issue, right? You're like, what is this? And who made this? And there's an aboriginal sort of quality to it. Maybe they found this boat-shaped thing one generation and they dug it up in the sand and then they mounted it on this primitive stand, right? And they were slaughtering their sheep on it or something and praying to it, who knows what. But there's kind of an intriguing, again, curiosity aspect to it. So I designed a variety of these. And this also incorporated my fiberglass and composite skills, which I'll get into just in a bit here. So the hull is actually a fiberglass hull, because if the original was made out of solid mahogany, it was a baby killer, right? It was top heavy. So I made a mold of that. It's a hollow shell, and then I veneered the top, and again, primitive. But this particular line, so this represents the second or third line of furniture that I was doing, and I revisited that, because when you're shipping all over the country, there's other factors you have to take in consideration. That other piece was 84 inches, 7 feet, and it had to go common carrier because it was larger than the maximum UPS girth. So there's nothing like designing around UPS girth, but I said, fine, I'll redesign the piece, and it was nice to revisit that and refine the lines. You can see this is a little more refined, and it all knocks down. And that's a 5-foot piece, and that's UPSable. So you can then, someone orders it, I would make them in limited edition, 10 at a time, and you order it, it's all boxed, all ready to go. You'd get it the next day, FedEx, put it together by yourself. No tools required, sound like IKEA. And it was cost effective, because as a businessman you have to consider those factors. Now most of you don't have to think about those kind of things, but being in a furniture maker, shipping is a whole nother line. So there's some other shots of that. So then from this sort of series, I continue to expand on that, because that one before was becoming very successful. It was my bestseller. At one show, I would sell 10, which was really, really good at it. So I designed a variety of other pieces still, again, this sort of geode, right? This ball, carved top. And then there's another iteration where I started putting mother of pearl on the top left. You can see a little inlay there. Quilted maple tops. And then an entire line from there, cafe tables, stools. Started getting to steam bending. I do like legs and curves. So then this is a side table. Oh, did I go back? Yeah, I guess so. And then on that, clients would come to me and ask me to do real crazy stuff. That's the big effect there, the crazy, right? And if you're familiar with Mackenzie Child, they're in Western New York, but they do national, sort of this really crazy kind of stuff. So a client came to me and said, hey, can you design a bedroom set for my 9-year-old daughter? I think that was $25,000, so that's, pretty nice commission for a 9-year-old kid, really. But hey, it works. I'm not here to judge. So I don't mind pushing myself out of my comfort zone. I think that's really important, to do things that you're uncomfortable with, you might discover. When I teach my design courses, in fact, most of my courses, I usually start with a design, and I have the saying, you don't know what a line is until you cross it, right? And that's an aesthetic, and also from a functional standpoint. When you're designing a chair leg, for example, how thin can that leg be? Well, you don't know until you break one. Okay, you may think it's here, and it could be wherever here. So you gotta push that limit, and until you fail, then you're up too far, right? So I usually do that when I stick my foot in my mouth and tell bad jokes, but you know, it's part of the process, or at least my process. But from that kind of fun line, another woman had Mackenzie Child's ceramic legs and wanted me to design a table around that. So here I really started to push the limit. This is a dining room table, 4x8. And it has a number of interesting elements. So my veneering with that wavy contoured seam, again, why does it have to be big pieces? So I then, this is Ava DeRay top, and did this sort of patchwork. Also, does everybody know what chatoyance is? Chatoyance is how the light refracts off the different density in wood and makes the wood shimmer, has a three-dimensional quality. And for example, like in parquet floors, if you look at it from one direction, it looks light, and from the other direction, it looks dark, right? Chatoyance will do that. So by rotating each piece 30 degrees, as you can see, you get light and dark and in between. So when you walk around this table, you're changing your angle of view, and these pieces really dance. So that was one interesting element that I started playing with. In addition, this wavy edge, and how do you match that hardwood edge to the veneer, right? How do you make that cut? So I developed the system of offset templates and template guides, and that's something we'll be teaching on Sunday. And although it works for a serpentine edge, but if you're doing a demi-lune or just an oval table, right, making that hardwood line up perfectly, it can be a challenge or very tedious. And the system I came up with is very, very fast and accurate. I mean, it's a perfect tight seam, although it'll also allow you to cut an inlay on that, which we'll also be doing. But here's where we started playing with this trompe-l'oeil effect, where you're pulling the corner back, and those are all inlaid gems. And again, it's sort of this discovery of inner beauty. You know, it's always like when you're digging through your grandmother's closet or attic, right? You go up there and you're looking through stuff and you're discovering kind of things. I love that. So there's the full piece there. And then from that, lots of people started asking me for these gem encrusted. I think this, I was influenced, this is like 76 when I saw the King Tut exhibition in New York City. And I was just fascinated with all the, you know, the tombs and the coffin, and how they managed to get all these gems and inlay with probably stones and bones in their fingers and toes kind of thing. And I was really impressed with that. But so I started doing a lot of these inlays, and they're really a wower. When I finished this one, I was like, wow, that, you know, you just want to stare at it and stroke it like, wow. So now it's become a requested, no matter what style I work in, people will say, oh, can you do that little detail? And you don't need a lot, you just need a little piece. It just adds that element of intrigue. In addition, from far away, it pulls you in. I also, when I teach, I have this sort of perception and distance. A piece should look interesting 30 feet away, because you might walk in and only see a silhouette. So the form is important there. Then you get halfway to it and you start noticing what it's made out of, and hopefully that will intrigue you to walk even closer and then discover something else. And I like different levels of detail. So you end up looking really close and maybe suddenly pull open drawers, walk around the back side. Are you discovering something? And it just keeps drawing you in more and more and more. So these are other examples of the use of the chatoyance and these patchwork, and of course the inlay and the trompe-l'oeil, and also the wavy contoured seam. Detail there. And then from there I started going with sculpture with a furniture format. So this is not functional furniture, but it sort of looks like it. That's a solid piece of sycamore, spalded and then carved into a trompe-l'oeil. Again, this discovery, like you're pulling this blanket over and you found it. So there might be 3 levels of time or cultures here. You have this King Tut sort of relic, and someone found that, some Aborigine, and put it on this, this leg system, and they've been, preying on it and again slaughtering their sheep, and then it got put in grandma's attic and covered up with a blanket. There's these levels of possible different cultures that have handled that. So I've done a series of these pieces, and again, there's the amber down on the bottom. Detail.
In your career, are you doing all of this work yourself, or are you relying on other craftsmen in your studio?
These, I'm doing, most of these I've done well, this level, it's all me. I think I had my guy do the turning, and maybe someone did the legs. On this piece, I think I did the entire one myself. The turning, I had one of my guys do the turning, but this is sort of the experimental, because now, at this point in my career, I have sort of a line of furniture or lines of furniture. I would manage all that. The guys are now doing that, which then frees me up to experiment and do speculative work. I mean, that's really our goal, or my goal is to do whatever I want, right? I just want to make shit, right? Excuse me, but that's a technical term. And but financially, I need to manage that. So I had a business that was generating that, and it allowed me to do some of the speculative work on the side, if you will, while I was doing all the payroll and doing all the sales and all the billing and doing all the shows, and then training people and managing the shop and maintenance and all that stuff. So my utilization rate wasn't very effective, which is the amount of time I get on the shop floor. So while they're all making money, then when they kind of go home, I'd stay late, or if I could pull a couple hours out of the way, then I would go work on something that's in the corner kind of thing. And then another side thing, we have a series of YMCAs in our town, and again, I'm working with architects and designers, and they say, hey, can you do this activities room? And they know I built tree forts and what have you. So as a sideline, I did all the activity rooms. So I built all the fixtures, paint all the murals. I designed these sort of, the bottom one is this King of the Hill, which is really a great thing, because where the kids are crawling, that's, I don't know, 21 degrees or something, where the kids could barely crawl up this ledge that got narrower and narrower, and then everything else was really steep and siliconed. So it's King of the Hill, right? You get like 20 kids up there, and you have ropes, and they're all hanging on the ropes, and they all like push each other down and slide down and whatnot. So I spent a few years doing a whole bunch of these sort of on the side for all the YMCAs. And they were just another outlet of fun. And I always try to incorporate more, like we want to send a message to this farmer here. When you throw these Nerf ball fruit, if you eat a lot, you get fat, because they'd go in his mouth and his belly would fill up with them. So this subconscious, we were concerned about trying to teach the kids, overeating, which I'm not doing a good job on here. So I made a whole bunch of these things. That was just kind of a side business. Some of my interiors, again, working with interior designers, gave me a chance to work with large sculptural pieces. So this is a packing company, so I designed and made this sort of roof system, like a package opening up. And that's a 6-foot diameter fiberglass, a globe, again, bronze with my bronze finish. Another fun thing, and they said, when we have clients come in, we always end up standing around a coffee pot, right? The client comes in, you want a cup of coffee, we're in the coffee room. We need to wow these people. Because it's very competitive. They were a packaging company, right? So I said, okay, I got this idea. Let me make a coffee pot. So that's actually a working coffee pot. Remember Grandma's 50 cut? 50? So that's what that is, but you can see it's just the shell, and it just drops down in there. But that day, they were packaging golf balls. So that globe is actually one of those exterior safety lights, right? And you'd put the widgets, whatever they were packaging, in there. So when the clients come in, they get a cup of coffee, and they say, wait, is that our golf balls? And this line was, we eat, drink, and sleep you, right? And it actually increased the sales something like 10%. I mean, they came back 6 months later and said, you cannot believe how many people, they remember us. It's all about leaving an impression, right? So they would go back to wherever they came from and said, you know, should we go with these people and they're 2.5 cents more or whatever? Yeah, but they were really cool and they put that extra attention to us. So I actually enjoyed doing that one piece, kind of, and this was before steampunk. Everybody knows steampunk, the term? You know, this was before steampunk was punky, I guess. And I would do interiors. This is a big warehouse. So we built all the walls and on a very low budget, try to create these offices in a factory. And other ones, I put the, you know, we did all a mural, all of wall finishes, helped designing the carpet, had that custom made. See the slide, put the slide in. There's a gold leaf wall. That horse, I didn't make the horse, but we had that commission. That was a red glass mosaic horse. And it's just real fun interiors. But getting back to furniture. So some of the other pieces, I do enjoy elegant furniture, Parsons style. This particular one was made for this 21-year-old who just inherited $45 million, was a raging alcoholic, and wanted me to do a dining room table for him, but he wanted his, the center, there's 5 stainless steel cubbies that they come out, so you can bake cakes in there. And then the next set were deeper, and then the third set you could fill with ice, and he had his scotch collection, and each, during a dinner, you could take these trays out and put them back in, or, as you saw the first one, or you can cover it back up. So, interesting style. This was one, she wanted me to match a Noguchi, but I don't think that's anything to do with Noguchi, but again, when I design, I want to push the limit. Like, you remember that one real crazy piece? The hardest type of design is when someone doesn't know what they want. You know, I always say, well, what style do you want? You know, give me some, I'm not going to do a knockoff, but give me pictures of what you like. And she says, oh, I don't know what I like. I just want something, a wall divider. Give me something. So I would design intentionally an American Craftsman style, a minimalist style, all these different styles. And at the very bottom, I wanted to cross the line. I did that real crazy one, little thumbnail sketch. And she's like, no. And she's like, that's the one I want. So when I design, I like to design the entire spectrum. Then the client will hone in, oh, I like this one over here. And then I'll take that, bring that up, and then expand on that style. So this was another style dining room table. And of course, it opens up and the leaves are stored inside. I think I've done a variety of these. Other dining room tables, again, sculptural. You can start seeing the pyramid, the influence of the pyramid. And I've done chairs and a series of chairs for them. Another dining room table. This opens up. These leaves are quite interesting because they're honeycomb. So it's 1.5 inch honeycomb material. It's veneered. Because we've all done this, right? Thanksgiving, honey, go down to the basement and get the dining room table leaves, and you're lugging them up the stairs and you're putting them in, and this is for a penthouse in Chicago overlooking the park with the, what's it called? The Inspiration. What's the word? Chicago? Come on, somebody, anybody? You know the park I'm talking about? Up on the lake. Yeah, where the bean is, that big, so it was overlooking that. Anyhow, it was on a penthouse, and they didn't have any place to store the leaves, and she was an elderly woman, so these are honeycombs, so you can literally pick these up with one hand. They're very, very light and very, very stable. So it's like cardboard, right, in a honeycomb, and they're veneered with masonite on either side, and then you can veneer on top of them and put a hardwood edge on. Great material to work with. So then I started, now we're on my 4th line of one day I just kind of got sick of designing, and I said, let's just take a chunk of wood and start carving. This is therapy, right? It's cheap therapy. So I just started designing, and it makes me smile. So hey, my therapist doesn't make me smile, so this does. So I'm sticking with this, and I just started carving these legs and having just fun with it and see where we want, see what would come up with no preconceived design on paper. Just go with it, and you know, I would encourage everybody to try that one day. Just take a chunk of wood and just start going to bandsaw, just start cutting away and see what happens. You know, they're not. I always tell my wife, they're not all winners. You know, sometimes it ends up in the fire pile, but again, it crosses the line. You might discover something, and so I came up with this line, and then consequently, it turned to this. These sell really well in San Francisco. Go figure. And I'm currently doing one right now, just having fun with these pieces. What else do we got? And some other sculptural pieces. This was done for a new couple, and they wanted a piece that represented their relationship. So each of these posts were profiles of nudes, right? Had to do a lot of research. And so they represent the two people in a relationship, but the negative space, you see the negative space that they create is sort of its own entity. And these are 8 foot tall, and there's the nude reference, and metallic finish. But the best part is they're on bearings. So they're in their front hallway. When you come in, you touch them, because all my work at shows, I'd always have a sign that says, please touch. Right, I hate these signs. Oh, don't touch. I'm defiant. I have, I'll stand there, look over there, and I got to touch it. I'm always touching stuff in museums. But these pieces, you want to touch the surface to see what it is, and then they turn. They're very sensitive bearings, and it changes that negative space between. As relationships are constantly evolving and changing, these pieces sort of represent that process. So that was kind of a fun piece. Then, let's see, now we're talking 2008. Does everybody know who Wendell Castle is? Yes? Okay, so Wendell Castle is also from Rochester. He's probably currently number 4 in the world. His chairs start at like 30 grand, but they're usually like $150,000, okay? So he came to me, and I felt at that point in time that I was hitting the ceiling. I was doing shows, I just couldn't, I call it the zero factor. I couldn't add a zero to my price point, and it wasn't just me, it was the general consensus of all my peers, if you will. We all kind of hit this level, and making that next step was a big step. So Wendell came to me and actually asked me to run his shop. He basically said, I need someone to run my shop when I'm here, when I'm not here, and when I'm really not here. And it was an honor. I'm not one to ride anybody's coattails, but I had this machine, a 10,000 square foot shop, and overhead and employees, and it wasn't getting anywhere, so I took the opportunity. He made me a very sweet deal. In addition, would allow me to, he would give me my own shop, and I would be able to continue my own career. So I thought it was a good opportunity. So I got all my employees jobs. I had the auction of the century. 10,000 square feet of equipment was a pretty good auction. Packed. When you own 20 routers, how many routers do you really need, right? I mean, it was a hard decision. It's like, well, I'll take 1 of each. Well, 2 of each. So I saved 8, 2 plunge, 2 horsepower, 3 horse, 1.5, trim route, But I packed it all in, and I had my forklift right in the center and everything, 30-foot ceilings. And if I wanted to get to my table, so I'd have to forklift it down. But I was working for Wendell at the time, and it was a great experience. So we would, I then helped him, and I've been subcontracting to him all his fiberglass, not all, but a lot of his fiberglass work. So some of his process, besides making these out of stacked laminate, which is what he's known for, we would also carve out a foam and make molds in fiberglass parts. I then sort of started pushing him into the 21st century with digital rendering and taking models and scanning the models in, and then they could be CNC'd out. And he was great to work for. He was open to my creativity, because I need an outlet for my creativity. He would be open to that. So I'd say, hey, how about let's do one of these chairs in different materials. Let's make one out of glass, and these are all digital. Let's make one out of chrome. Let's make a chia chair, right? And he was all for it. And I said, what a great show that would be. The same chair with like 20 different materials. Back. So in any event, on that note, then the recession hit, and he actually didn't sell a piece for something like a year, and he had to make some hard decisions. So I was the highest paid, and first one in, first one out kind of thing. So we came to a business arrangement. He treated me well, and I got a chair, and I went back on my own. At that point, I then went to work for an architect, because we were still in the thick of the recession. So I worked for an architectural firm as their creative director for 3 years, and then finally recovered, and I couldn't stand the corporate cubicle anymore, and finally went back on my own. But these are also some of the things that so this is drawn in SketchUp, right? So digitally rendering, just to show you some of the design process. I'll work in SketchUp and AutoCAD. and doodles. I usually start with a doodle, then for the sale I'll work in SketchUp. Everybody familiar with SketchUp? If you're not, it's a great program. Three-dimensional rendering, you can apply different colors. You can, well, what's it look like in this wood or that wood or this wood, which is really great if you can't visualize. It's really fun to do that.
This is a rendering still?
No, that's the real piece. So that's the rendering, and then that's the piece that I made. But it's great to show people or yourself if you're not sure, if you want to experiment with different color contrasts. I mean, it's not photographically perfect, but it gets close. And then usually from there I'll go to AutoCAD. If it's a high tolerance job, I'll then convert it to AutoCAD because SketchUp doesn't have a really good dimensioning thing to it. So AutoCAD, I'll bring it in AutoCAD and do traditional sort of rendering. This is then if I need to subcontract out, this is done in AutoCAD, but it's not my work. That's actual digital rendering of a bench that I'm designed. And then, of course, I said, why don't you put it in my Paris penthouse? So that's all digitally created, and this was done 10 years ago or so. So this is, at the time, it was pretty cutting edge stuff. I was just intrigued with that. And I'll side plug. I don't know, did you link my TEDx talk? So I gave a TEDx talk 6 months ago or so on technology in the human hand. So it's really addressing, can you call yourself a craftsman if everything is created by a machine and you're just designing? So if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to give that a try. It's always a controversial subject. I've given that talk. I teach at Mark Adams, which is probably the best school in the world, a couple other places around the country, and also the Chippendale School of Furniture in England. And I've given that talk there, and Brazil. And every time I give that talk, there's always lots of discussion. Other sculptural pieces real quick, some mural, copper leaves, deciduous life. This is sort of, again, this core, it's gold-leafed copper, and then this exploding universe in a tree. Again, dealing with patinas. You can see SketchUp work there and some of my notes and trying to figure it all out. Here's another one, fiberglass. These are federal credit unions I've done. Up on the Great Lake, they wanted something that represented the Great Lakes. So I was like, these are sails sailing through the universe. And you just got to put on your hip waiter boots and come up with some line and they'll buy it. It's all spin, Some other more sculptural pieces. This is a bird feeder, a little pedestal. Again, these are all fiberglass and gold and copper and silver leafed. Then another side business is an architect knew that I had sculptural talents and there were some missing components. So this is the first mayor's house, 1836, I think it is. So the top right-hand column, when we stripped all the paint, we took 3/4 inch of paint off of these columns, and when we were done, that on the upper right-hand card, that was left, and there was actually components that weren't even there anymore. So from photographs, I was able to scale and sculpt and hand carve the new components. I take molds of that and then cast in reproduction fiberglass components. So that's just another side thing that I do. But there's also woodworking skills. You can see the column base that we did. We actually, on the one, we actually took, these are 36-inch diameter columns, and we split the column, took the brick supporting column, which was falling apart, and put steel in, put these columns together. All the bottoms were rotted out, so we consolidate, we inject epoxy into the punky wood, consolidate that, and then mill and splice in new staves, and then made all new bases for them. So this is just another little side thing that I do. More fiberglass work. This is for Harris Corporation. Remember the globe? It's a $20,000 mold, so you might as well remake another one when you can. This one, this is a duplication, so you can see the bottom area where there's rust. That's all there was. The rest of that arch and all that curlicue is all a combination of wood and fiberglass. So we reproduced this entrance on this cast iron building. There's the cast iron building. You see there's 2 entranceways. I reproduced one in addition to all the other elements. This is an interesting project. This was a school Everything you see that's not brick is fiberglass. So the precast was a bad mix and it was all spalling, it was all crumbling. It took them 40 years to settle a lawsuit. Then they had to figure out how to fix it. And the only way that they were saying is, well, we got to take the precast out. But the precast is structural, plus you're going to screw up all the brick. So they asked me to come and consult. I came up with a system to skin over all the precast. So we made 1,200 molds and made shells. I don't have any pictures of shells, and skinned over the entire school. And it's also graffiti proof because it's non-porous and it looks just like fiberglass. So all these elements here that you're seeing is all fiberglass components. Other things is a restaurant, did a line drawing out of steel, and then these frames, I like interactive pieces. Again, you got to come up and play with the piece, and you slide and you frame in your own composition. Of course, after I come in the next day, they had all these picture frames. It's a restaurant filled with pictures of fruits and vegetables. But the check was still good, and I got a picture. It's a fancy restaurant in Rochester. Other sculptural elements, again, I'm not intimidated, although wood and veneer, which we'll get into, is my true love. I love working in other materials, so RIT commissioned me to do a sculpture representing the evolution of their students. So inside is a meditation garden. That's a 4-inch hand-hewed piece of stone. The next one is sort of more refined. There's another one 30 feet out. And then we use a laser to line up these windows and hand cut these windows out. So even though these pieces of stone are going every which way, they actually start getting more refined, but the whole all lines up, kind of continuing this sort of soul throughout the piece. Other sculptures I've done, this is I did for an architectural firm. Again, that's fiberglass. And again, I always love a good competition. There's something called the Architectural Digest, and AIA has this napkin sketch award, right? And you have to do a little sketch. It's a big, very prestigious thing, and people send from all over the world little sketches on a napkin, and they have a big competition. And I'm thinking, I got this. This is easy, because they never said the napkin had to be flat, right? And I just know how architects think. They're just all thinking. And I, again, pushed the limit. So I took one napkin and made this little origami church out of it and then drew on the church. And they didn't know what to do with me. So they created a whole other category just for me and gave me an award for the AIA. And what I really want to enjoy, because I know I don't know the publisher in New York City, but I'm sure they got a wall and they've got all the napkins. You don't get them back. So they probably have all the ones, all the years down this hallway, framed, right? And then I'm sure they probably I had to make a special frame to box this in. So that was kind of fun. I was also asked to, Rochester has this Greentopia Festival, because then remember Sustainable started coming in. So for 2 years I was the director for that. And I created a series of large outdoor sculptures for them. And they first said, well, it's green living or living green. I kept on thinking, well, what does living green represent to me? So when I design and teach design, often, as I mentioned, I don't just want to make something pretty. I want to have a bit deeper meaning. So when you design, I want you to start with something that's inspirational. If it's love of sailing or sex or booze or whatever it is, you start with that, and then either you write adjectives and maybe doodles and assign drawings to each adjective, and they might get refined and distilled and explored. And even if it doesn't look like what you started with, if that element, that curve, that line is incorporated into your work, it means more to you. If you were making two pieces and one was just a pretty knockoff piece of furniture and the other one had your wife's ass on it, sorry ladies, if it had some curve that you really got off on, it would mean a lot more to you. You would like, wow, or if it had a pebble that you picked up on your honeymoon or whatever, it has more soul to it. Or if the tree was from that your grandfather planted. I like to have work that has a story behind it and there's something more meaningful. So in this particular one, I was like, what's living green? That's what everybody, so I was going to do a bed and make it all covered with moss. And then I said, well, let's just do a standard Parsons chair. So that's a 2,200 pound, 14-foot chair. and it was in the Baal Shalom headquarter atrium, and then it moved down as Kodak on the bottom on the left-hand side, and there's this Pond Soleil Bridge that goes over a gorge. Rochester has a 100-foot gorge in the middle of the city, which you can't see from anywhere except for this bridge, because that's whatever it is. Well, so then I just recently moved it. We moved down to the Finger Lakes from Rochester. We're now on a hill with 10 acres. I now have a shop on site, and 10 acres to cover. We now have 14 large sculptures, and I painted it purple, and there's a chair, and there's a red ribbon in the background there. Other recycled things. I love a good challenge is taking materials and just making something of it. So if you have a lot of something, it's a lot easier. Just take material and make something. So that's a CD flag made out of used CDs. Recycled material, Midtown Mall, which is one that just got recently torn down. It was the first interior mall in America, in Rochester, go figure. But that was a beam that I salvaged out of there, just as is, found object. It's currently at the public market. Other pieces, a 16-foot dream catcher on the left. There's this historic wood. I'll get into the historic wood, but on the right-hand side, again, key to my heart. Right, so a little story there. The bottom left, this last winter, I don't know about you, but we had 35 below wind chill factors. Did you guys beat that? I think we got. Did you have you? So free material, right? So always this got picked up by the Huffington Post. They did a whole series of ice sculptures. I figured an icicle. Could you tie an icicle in a knot? So I was filling balloons, and then literally like an hour and a half they'd freeze solid, and then a balloon would pop, and that's how I created that sculpture there. Speaking about soul, so the University of Rochester has historic trees. We have a guy called Patrick Berry from the 1850s. He's responsible for bringing all these rare trees into Rochester, and we have the Lilac Festival, which has the largest collection of lilacs in the world. This whole park, and he designed that, blah, blah, blah. So his estate, which I do restoration on all the furniture inside, he's planted some of these trees that are not indigenous to Rochester, and then they get diseased. We have to take them down, so then the University of Rochester hires me to mill the lumber and create furniture. So again, it has this furniture has a story behind it. This was planted by Patrick Berry, so there's a lot of meaning behind that. And a series of pieces. This is a sycamore that we're milling up. There's a big burl from a beech tree, freeform carving. The bottom one, again, represents the building blocks of students. So these are, some of them have stories, some of them are just pretty, quite frankly, but I like to try to have something behind that. Veneer, so back to veneer, right, and woodworking, because that's what I'm here for. So veneer is typically cut at 1/42 of an inch. There's one mill in Japan that cuts at 1/100th of an inch. And it's so translucent, I started doing lighting, and it's flexible. So it's really, really fun. So there's a series of LED lightings that I've done for a client in Florida. Then I got kind of jazzed on this LED. So again, I worked with other materials. Left-hand side is thermal form, just acrylic. Take acrylic, you put it in the oven, you can take it out, you can bend it. 2 minutes later, it freezes. Really fun stuff. Series of lighting for them. And then there's a bar that I did that's all hand carved. Really can't see it. That's just off my phone snapshot. But getting back to some of my larger commissions, this is a media center. This won me my first Veneer Tech Challenge. I don't know if anybody knows that. It's an international award. I've won 4 of them. This was my first one. This is a obviously media center. There's actually a TV that pops up out of that center, football shaped, all curved, and you can see the little, I think I have a detail of, there's that. Silver inlay, Ambonia, quilted maple, Wengi, Pomley Sapili, and then I thought we had that detail. Oh, you can see the detail there of the mother of pearl in a trompe l'oeil. They were like, oh, can you give us that little extra piece? So they start requesting that. It's kind of fun. Also did a bed for the same client. This particular bed actually splits in 2. Those legs are not real legs. There's an undercarriage. You can barely see that's old casters, because these are those Posturepedic remote control beds, and apparently to make them, they're 2 individual beds. So this whole bed pivots and splits open, so you can make the bed. In addition, for you curve lamination guys, those spirals on either side are not only compound curves, they start at 2 inches thick and go down to 1 inch thick. So they're tapered compound spiral curves. Plus there's a door there, and it has silver and Wenge cap on it. And then, of course, that drawer opens up, and that's my carved piece. I think I got a shot of the drawer. I'm trying to line that drawer up and get it onto a drawer and make it all line up while you're making it was quite a challenge. And you can see the seam there where it opens up. And some other technically challenging pieces that I've done. This actually is a reliquary for their dog. You know, I'm not here to judge, but they needed a place to put their dog. So the left-hand piece is coopered, it's veneered, compound curved. And then on the bottom, that's also a compound curved piece. So I've been doing a lot of compound curved planes. Getting towards the end here. So this one won my second Veneer Tech Challenge Award. So then, early on when you're talking about the playing with the sapwood, so again, it was like, oh, you got a book match. Well, why do you have to book match? I don't understand. You're limited in your design. It's a kaleidoscope, and you can do a radial, right, and these sunbursts, which are all great, but you don't have much control over the design. So if you start spin matching, and tomorrow if you're attending I'll be demonstrating this, instead of opening it up, if you take it open up and spin it and put it together, you can get an asymmetrical match. And then you don't always have to go on a common axis. If you do this wavy contoured seam, you can select what you want and what you don't want. And if you cut little pieces, I mean, if you had a heartwood, sapwood straight seam and you cut it in pies, you could make a circle, right? You could segment it and control this line between the heartwood and sapwood. So once you have that freedom, you now have complete freedom to create any design you want. So you're not limited to the mirrored kaleidoscope sort of book matching. So a landscape architect came to me and said, and I'm happy to say a lot of people say, look, just make us something. You know, we'd like it to fit here, we'd like a couple drawers, but knock yourself out. So I thought about what they wanted. They were landscape architects, so I was inspired by, in the spring, these little fiddleback fern, you know, when the ferns grow up in little spirals. So that was really the inspiration behind the piece, right? And then I came up with this spiral match. And apparently no one's ever done it before, so it got a lot of attention, and then became another sort of line. So you can see, you know, the seams are not straight, they're wavy. I have an example up here that kind of demonstrates that. Even closer, but you can see I'm working with the positive, negative, and we'll be demonstrating this tomorrow. Here's another commission. This is actually, wow, weird perspective. That's 8-foot buffet for the same client about relationships who commissioned me. They commissioned me to do another relationship piece. So I figured, well, I can do one spiral, let's do 2 interlocking spiral, and that's on a silver-leafed case, and there's 16 drawers that pull out. There's a buffet for their dining room table, which I also made. So consequently, I then wrote a book on this technique. Publisher approached me and said, can you know, this is pretty revolutionary, can you write about that? And I started to write about it, but I was like, well, to explain an asymmetrical or spin match, you kind of have to go back to book match, right? You need to, where do you start? So instead of being 3 chapters, it turned out to be like 12 or something, because I then decided, well, let's take this all the way back to the very, very beginning. So I think there's a copy here. We did ship in copies. This is my sales pitch, shameless. We do have books. They're not here today, but over the weekend we brought some books in, so I'll be signing and selling books. But it is a comprehensive book on veneering. It shows how the veneer is made. I toured the largest veneer plant in the United States. It explains how to condition, how to seam, and not just one way, because I also realized that not everybody has, you know, a $25,000 sliding table saw or something, that, you know, you have to use a knife or a guillotine. So I try to cover every single way to cut veneer, every single way to seam veneer, every single, all the cores, the tapes, the glues. So it's pretty comprehensive, and then the last couple chapters actually talk about the asymmetrical matching, and then actually I demonstrate how to do the seam or the spiral match. But an interesting one, again, this is a very powerful piece, the top center heart. One of my students her husband was dying of cancer. And when I talked about what's in your life right now, what really turns you on, and she goes, well, this doesn't turn me on, but all I want to do is hug my husband. Now, that's pretty powerful. And I said, well, what does that look like to you? So she came up with this crescent shape, right? This hugging element, okay, inside a heart. Now for me, that's really powerful. Excuse me. So that was a very, very successful piece. And it means a lot. I mean, you know, you're not going to, you know, that's, I'll leave you with that. But, you know, you can see, so having a meaning behind your design can be an extremely powerful piece. Here's another one that I just recently did. And I don't mind stealing sort of design. She had this chair. This is a makeup mirror. So you can see the chair had this sort of Celtic knot sort of thing. So when she had the mirrors, so again, I did not a spiral, but this loop, and I knew it would be reflecting into the mirrors to create this sort of Celtic knot. And this one, although it's still an asymmetrical design, well, kind of asymmetrical, I still, as I worked along, I book matched each one, but changed. So I created a heartwood sapwood loop, but you can see the book matching is still, the pattern kind of repeats. And that was quite challenging to figure that one out. And these are other examples of spirals and asymmetrical matching. Again, key to my heart in the top right. Another Nautilus one here. Dining room table. My cousin-in-law actually brought a little Lazy Susan here. If you look at the Lazy Susan, again, it's playing with that. Is this natural or not? You'll see the sapwood design is just sort of random, but trees don't grow with sapwood on the inside. So I enjoy creating pieces that, you know, woodworkers or people in the know were like, wait, this is not natural. This is not quite right. If you think about it, most people just think it's a pretty design, but I like to challenge to see who is thinking and who's not. So I've been playing with a lot of that. Oh, and then the bottom right on Sunday, this is showing how you can match the hardwood edge, right? Did this. I call it Lone Star. I mean, I was teaching a class and said, how can you hand inlay a star? And I just did that, and I got home, and my wife's like, that's a Texas flag. Not that I have anything against Texas, but I do. And now I got this in my living room looking at it like, Texas, really? Out of all the states, Texas? I guess it could be Mississippi or Arkansas, but or Minnesota. But anyhow, so this is kind of fun. And the edge is also tapered, so you can see how the thickness changes. But that was a fun project. So then I started experimenting with compound veneering and extreme compound veneering. So if you know, veneer, we're almost done here. So veneer only really folds like a sheet of paper, right? You can make a cylinder, but you can't make a ball out of it, okay? So from my steam bending experience, and I take all these little bits of information that I have, and I had this hunch that I could veneer this model. So I took a mold off of a model. Someone's got to do it, okay? Mark, I know we already got a volunteer for next year's assistant. But so I took a life-size mold off of a model, made a fiberglass casting of her, and veneered her with 2 pieces of veneer. Okay, so it's with a whole variety of techniques, stretch and compress, and I treat the wood a whole bunch of ways, and I'll be sharing that tomorrow afternoon. We don't have any nude models for you, Mark, but we'll be doing some compounds. So if you have a table that has a waterfall or a radiused edge, how do you take veneer and wrap that around there? Because as some of you may know, veneer is the best figured wood. I mean, it's very rare to get the high quality. When they cut a tree and they get good quality, they ship it off the veneer plant. It's just better quality. You can do more with it. So this is kind of showing you some of that. So this won me my 3rd or 4th Veneer Tech Challenge Award. In fact, they thought it was carved, and I had to tell them it was veneer, and they didn't believe me. So, so that's that. Another one. I don't know if anybody knows who Garth Fagan is. Lion King, right? The Lion King, the Broadway show Lion King. He's a Tony Award-winning choreographer for the Lion King. He's out of Rochester, dance troupe choreographer. 75 years old. So that's what it looks like on the top left to take a mold off of him. Now I've taken molds off of Mark Adams and Michael Fortune and Silas, and I'm getting pretty good. My record is 12 minutes, but this was 20 minutes. He actually fell asleep. But so you take a mold off of it, then I take a casting, the next one over, and then I sort of sketched out this sort of Lion King mask. Then I modify it with clay. Then from there I take another mold. I make a series of male and female molds. And then I made this out of 2 pieces of veneer, again, this walnut mask. And then tying back to the inner beauty, the back side of the mask is 24 karat gold leafed. So that I then donated to his 75th gala birthday auction, which of course he then bought, you know, ego, maybe. So that concludes, so then of course my inspiration, my wife and my 2 current kids. So they are certainly an ongoing inspiration for me. But I think that's it. How long did we go for? So anybody have any questions?
I do.
1. Yes.
It looks like about 12 lifetimes worth of work there.
Thank you.
Oh my God, I don't know how you did it.
Well, I you know, it's not work for me, it's play. I have my daytime job, but weekends I then make sculpture and I just play. I can't sit still. I like to create. I get bored easily. I usually have 2 to 5 projects going on at once. You know, usually 1 cup in the morning. That's pretty much half calf too. I can't do full calf because I get all twitchy. But yes, thank you. I'll take this as a compliment. I enjoy experimenting, and this is just a sampling of what I do.
Be very proud of yourself.
Well, thank you. Yes.
Your masks that you're doing, are they fiberglass to start with, and then you put veneer on?
That's a good question. This particular one is fiberglass, but I also did one just out of veneer. Just 3 laminations of veneer and used the glue line. When I was doing this mask, I was also, because it's relatively new for me, so I'm still pushing the limits. I'm experimenting on different brews and formulations and adhesives. So I actually took a 3-inch diameter ball, right, half of a ball, and did something like 36 tests veneering this ball of all these different methods, trying to get a sense. Because the nude, that was actually 6 different processes. I mean, like I developed, you know, I don't know if it's true or not. Everybody knows like hide glue hammering, right? So I did that, and that was taking a while. So then I was doing CA hammering, you know, super glue. You can hammer super glue. You know, same method, just use super glue. I buy super glue by the pound, and so I tried that. So there's actually 6 different methods on that one nude, and I had a sense some methods work better, and depending on how extreme, and then I honed in more. So on this particular one, I did 3 different variations of this, one on fiberglass, because I had like 2 weeks to get this freaking thing done. So I knew I could get it this way, but then I wanted to take that opportunity to push it. So I do have one that's thin because people, oh, well, you're doing a fiberglass, that doesn't count. Okay, fine, shut up. Here's one that's all veneer and it's only 3 layers thick. And it is, you know, some people think it's cheating. And then next year I'm teaching compound veneering at Mark Adams, and he's challenged me to do a light bulb. So like, you're on, you know. He didn't think I could do the nude, so then now he's challenging me, and I enjoy teaching because when I teach, I typically don't do projects. I mean, you can do a project at home. I want you to do process and technique and push the limit. How thin can you make that chair leg? You know, take those opportunities to find what the boundaries are of your own technique and the material and your design. And then from there, you learn much more. You can go home and make something later. So that's how I like to teach. Yes?
I'm sort of overwhelmed by you. And I don't mean that it's like, Mark, you know, it's like, how many lifetimes have you worked? And what I'm wondering is, you're talking about managing a business, you're talking about doing your artwork, you're talking about, and it's like, OMG, you know, how do you manage it? I mean, what are you doing?
Well, it's actually a little easier now. Well, yes and no. There's pros and cons. When I had a large shop, I was managing. You know that I was, and I dove into management. I was interested in accounting and learning the business side of things, and the sales and packing and all that business side. But then I realized, you know, I'm in front of a computer all day long. Like, yeah, I'm a fine woodworker. You know, I was still doing the design, but I was getting only 2 hours on the floor. So now it's me and an apprentice. So I'm now more hands-on than ever. But of course, there's the juggling, because at night you got to, you know, you're trying to work. You know, your utilization rate, which is how many billing hours. You might put in 40 hours, but billing is, if you're lucky to get 20 to 30 hours, that you know, 50% utilization rate when you're working by yourself is a great rate, because you got to maintain and sweep and buy materials and all that. And then at the evenings, that's when I do my design and estimating, and that is a challenge, you know. But you know, I got a laptop and, you know, lots of beer. No, I sit on a couch and I'll design, and I'll usually take Mondays off and I'll work a half a day or what, and try to. And I'm very fast. I'm nuts about efficiency and wasted movement. My wife calls it, excuse me, asshole work mode. You know, like you know, a surgeon. You know, I really. So I just. But it's not managing anymore. I mean, it's just my life. I just do this. I just do it. You know, and I enjoy, it's not work to me, because on weekends I'm always doing stuff for my head, if you will, like that Dreamcatcher. That took a year to make, you know, and it's, you know, I have long-term, I got lots of projects going on all the time, and, you know, excuse me? I don't lose track of them. Sometimes they burn out, meaning you're really excited about something and you get halfway through it and then you get interested in something else, and that, you know, that ends up in a fire, and then you move forward. Like I was really jazzed on those trompe-l'oeil carvings and the gems, really jazzed about that. And they sold like in 3 days in galleries. But then, and I probably should just do that, but I would get bored. I mean, I don't have anything against any of these other master artists, but they do the same thing. And I couldn't do that if you paid me. You know, I mean, Sam Malouf, great, he was great, a really great guy. Just did the same thing. I mean, how can you do the same thing over and over? You know, and all these guys, quite frankly, are just, they don't evolve, in my opinion. They perfected their craft, their style, their design. They're making a great living. But I always want to push and make mistakes. I mean, I teach mistakes. I mean, I want you to make a mistake, because usually out of the mistake, it's an opportunity to become creative to solve it. And usually mistakes turn into wonderful, wonderful opportunities. So, yes?
Will you be covering your fiberglass techniques?
Well, on Sunday morning, I'm going to be doing the casting. I don't know if anybody had a chance to see the cold bronze casting. That's not technically fiberglass, it's composites is a better term. The glass layup, I'd be happy to talk about that. I mean, again, I'm here to feed you guys, so whatever you want to learn, I'm happy to sort of you know, adjust the course or what I'm demoing as much as I can. I can certainly talk at great length about fiberglass. It's, I mean, again, I've been doing it for 30 years, so I've got that.
Seems like a really versatile.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I've been trying to get, I got an article written called Dirty Little Bondo. Everybody know what Bondo is? Yeah. All right, dirty little secret. You know, it's like every woodworker's, you know, dirty little secret, and they won't take it. I'm like, everybody uses Bondo. I mean, you know, a little bit or a lot, or they should know what Bondo is, but, you know, they're like, no, our guys don't use Bondo. They don't make mistakes. I'm like, really? Like, really? No one makes mistakes? No one like, oh, we got a knot hole that I got to fill with some Bondo or whatever. But it's great stuff. It really is. You can carve it. I mean, and then you learn your carving techniques, because on the architectural stuff, you can put a big glob of Bondo, and when it turns green or when it's leather, it carves like butter, and you can carve it. You have to be very fast. You got about 2 to 5 minutes, if that, open time, but you can carve, you know, ionic columns and, you know, all this stuff. But it's great stuff, and I'd be happy to talk when we get into that. I mean, it wasn't a whole, and it's stinky to demonstrate real polyester. I use polyester, but you can use epoxy, but that just takes forever. So polyester you can kick, and you can make it set up in 15 minutes and keep rolling. But yes, the casting class, so my cheap pitch on the casting class, if anybody hasn't seen these, did everybody get a chance to see them? So you can take a casting or a carving, right? And this is, what I do is, you know, people will spend 400 hours making a desk, and then they go to Home Depot, and they buy themselves a pole, and then they show their neighbors and say, come over, see this desk I just made. And they're like, hey, I got the same pole on my kitchen cabinets. You know, and you're like, ugh. Or you make it out of wood, and it all gets a little woody. You know, when you're making, you see these pieces and everything's wood. So if you can accent it with a little detail, so you can take a simple carving, which might take you 4 hours or something to monkey around with this carving, and then you need to reproduce it. So instead of carving this 20 times for your kitchen cabinet, you then take a mold and you can cast the bronze piece, and then you can even add, like, this piece of mother of pearl, right? I use little beads in there to play with the texture. But this process, not including making the master, okay? If I have the master, like here was a pine cone. So speaking of soul, this pine cone is from the largest tree in the world, General Sherman out in Redwood tree. It's a sequoia out in Yosemite. And for educational purposes, it just happened to make it into my pocket, you know. You'll delete that from the, so this was a very, you know, this was a hike. My sons and I hiked the Half Dome, and this was a, you know, real sentimental piece. So I made it into a little pole. So point being is once I have the master, whatever that may be, could be a found object, could be something you spent days carving, it's probably a half hour, 15 minutes worth of work. I mean, you're basically mix and pour. Ooh, what's that take? You'll spend more time finding the yogurt cups and setting everything up before you actually mix and pour. Come back, you know, 30 minutes later, peel the mold open, close it back up, mix and pour. I got myself a pole. And then I can reproduce this and put it on my kitchen cabinets or what have you. And it's going to mean a lot more if it's something you found, and it adds accents. And you can add bronze powder, silver powder. You can use this to reproduce. Okay, back over here. So if you're into restoration, so here's a little medallion that we need to reproduce. And here's a brass. This was a knob. Someone asked me, I don't do a lot of restoration, but I do for friends and stuff. And I need to make some extra doors, and they were missing one of the poles. So I reproduced the pole. And this is just the raw casting. Then you put wax in here, and you can age it and give a patina. Here's one. People call me a screwball, so I made a screwball. This is one of my students. Her grandmother collected antique buttons. So she made this section and then cut this up, because you can cut, drill, tap, sand, and made picture frames to give out to all her family members, because this is grandma's buttons, and had a picture of her grandmother. I mean, that's good stuff. You can also take molds off of anything. Here's a piece of bark, right? And if I'm toying with taking the bark and wrapping it around like a square, again, to kind of put, wait, bark, that's not a square branch. You know, people make frames out of branches and stuff. So if you made it out of square, I might do a cabinet. Like, how'd you get that bark? You know, I want to kind of play with that, or maybe go concave. I don't know, I'm still toying with that. But you can take a mold off of anything. There's a mushroom there, and all little fins on the bottom side of the mushrooms. It will pick all that detail up, right? So, and you can add bronze powder. This is the weight and feel. It will patina. It's just wonderful, but it's a great, it is, and it's really, really easy. It really is. I mean, this is easy. Obviously, I do large 12-foot molds, and they can get quite complicated, multi-parts and what have you. But what I'm going to be teaching on Sunday morning is this process, and for $50, you'll have enough material to make a whole bunch of molds, and so I'd consider doing that for your next, you know, drawer or something, you know, just even if it's a rock that you stub your toe on. And we do body parts also. I don't know if did everybody see my thumb drive? And finger pull, right? So, and I only do parts above the waist and below the knees. So just, I did do 100 nipples for a cancer thing. Men and women, it was quite an interesting, thing. But anyhow, I digress. Any other questions? No? Yes? Okay, well, great. So just to reiterate, so tomorrow morning we're going to be doing the asymmetrical, asymmetrical matching, right? In addition, I'll show you how I condition, how I repair, seaming. So we'll do pressing, and again, I'm just going to go. So bring your fire pants and just hang on for the ride. I'm going to just try to give you as much as I possibly can in the morning. Then in the afternoon, we'll be covering the compound and extreme compound veneering. Then Sunday morning, we'll be doing the, is it Sunday morning? Yeah, I think Sunday morning is the casting. Yeah, the Sunday morning will be the cold bronze casting, and Sunday afternoon will be the pattern edge. Again, I push it to the extreme, but if you want to do a demi-lune table and trying to get a hardwood edge on there, this system is a great system, very, very fast. And that's actually the topic. So Schiffer publication on that book. I just finished my second book on that pattern. It's called Pattern and Inlay. So it's all about how to put hardwood edges on and inlay. And that will be Sunday afternoon. And then Sunday night, it's going to be alcohol consumption. And we'll be testing all your local microbreweries around here. So anyhow, so if there's no more questions, we're going to be doing some critique, right? I was in a show in Paris with my spirals, and they actually consider veneer work a real art form. I mean, they will just have veneer panels and hang it on the wall. And I was really, really inspired by that. I don't think you find much of that here in the States. I think everybody wants function out of that. So just the fact that you've hung and framed this, I think is honorable. Boy, I think it's a great piece. So the red, I think the center, for me, that's the thing that's sidebar. So whenever I'm doing my finishes or anything aesthetic, you can use this technique for anything. Turn away and glance at the piece, and turn away and glance at the piece. And wherever your eye goes to first is either good or bad, right? It's something that's standing out. Now, if it's intentional, great. But maybe it's not. So if you glance at this really quick, what's the first thing you see? I'm looking at those red dots, the center. And then I noticed that they seem to me, and again, maybe it's just the photograph, they may be a little flat relative to the other pieces. I don't think that's sand shading. Is that sand shading? Or is it just a pyro burning? Anybody want to fess up?
The sand shading on the green, those are stacked dyed veneers.
Yeah.
And glue them together with crazy glue.
Uh-huh.
And sand shading will glue very quickly. So mostly I tried to shadow the stippling with a.
So does this have a three-dimensional quality, meaning you've stacked these up and there's an edge of the veneer?
Yeah, what I wanted to do is to use double bevel marquetry.
Yeah.
So I needed the thickness, but I also wanted to add some, I didn't want to just have, shades of brown. I wanted to introduce some different colors.
With the double bevel, which is I'll be demonstrating tomorrow morning, I don't understand why you need the thickness. I mean, you can do double bevel with a single layer of veneer. So I don't quite understand. You were building up your.
That's what the other stuff was.
Okay. Although with that said, I get ideas all the time. When you're saying you're gluing these together and stacking, it'd be kind of cool if you stacked multiple layers and started going three-dimensional. Like, right? How cool would that be? Is if it started flat and some elements actually lifted off the surface. So So that would be kind of fun to try. The sand, so it's not, the sand shading seems like your sand might be a little on the coarse side. I don't know if you screen your sand or just using play sand. The finer sand would give you a more even shade. In addition, when I do sand shading, I don't know if you did this after or before you cut, I like to sand shade before I cut. Because so when you sand shade, sometimes you burn too much or it's uneven. So if I take a little square, sand shade the edge first, then I can cut my part out and have a little more control of that shading. And if I want it round, I might take my piece and cut a curve. But like if you're doing those seashells, the little points, and you're sand shading, those points always get brown and totally burnt. So if you sand shade the edge first and then cut, you can cut off a little of the sand shading and have a little more control and consistency from piece to piece to piece, right? So that helps also. So, and I was just saying the red seems a little out of place. Not necessarily the color, although it's maybe a little hot. Maybe you sand shaded the red and also gave that some three-dimensionality, because it looked like all the other pieces, you're trying to create contour lines and three-dimensionality, and then I see that red and it's just like a flat dot. So there seems to be a little inconsistency in the level that you're trying to work with. So I would say if you sand shaded those red or add a little texture, that would make it a little more consistent for the whole piece. Good? Next slide. And if it was turned upside down, it would ruin the whole piece. Oh, wow, cool. Great. Wow, very nice work. You didn't want to do a face card on the top? Yeah, this is a great piece. I like this a lot. Oh, even more. But let's go back. Go back, please. So it looks like on the left, the 5, is that supposed to represent a stack of cards, or is it a shadow line of the card? A deck of cards. So I might have, like on the leaf piece, if you use your saw to cut a bunch of, either use the kerf and just the glue line to represent a stack of cards. I'm a little unclear if that's supposed to be a shadow or a stack. Right? Also, what would have been good is if, in fact, since these cards are stacked, there would, in fact, be a shadow, very small shadow. And one good thing about marquetry is you can create very, very thin lines. It's really easy to do. You just put on black and then cut right next to it, and people are going to go, oh, man, how did you inlay that little strip of something? So right on that stack of cards, and you might have to take an actual stack of cards and hold a flashlight on it and try to see what the shadows are doing, but that would give it a real trompe-l'oeil. I mean, you're obviously trying to go for like a real stack of cards, so if you're shooting for that, it's typically the shadow lines, shadow and or highlights that push it right over the edge. So I would go shoot for that next time. That would really add a lot. And then again, the stack of cards seems a little weak. If it looked more like cards, or you take your knife or glue together a bunch of glue veneer, right? A stack of veneer and slice it, and then make the edge. There you go. Make the edge as the veneer. Slice that in two, and that might be another way of trying to emulate that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But this is phenomenal, and that jack is really intriguing. I actually like the face card underneath, because you're like, wow, I want to lift that up. What's under there? I mean, believe it or not, I get people that trompe-l'oeil gem table. People are like, oh, do they go all the way under? Oh yeah, yeah. I inlaid all those stones. Absolutely. So anyhow, let's open the box. Yeah, wow, this is great. Cribbage? Cribbage. I played cribbage once. Well, lots of tequila was involved, so I don't really know how to play, but phenomenal. This is really, really, really fun piece. You're gonna kill me on this one. So your screw heads, line them all up. Okay. I actually apprenticed, believe it, I actually apprenticed as, and this is where my stuff comes from. So I didn't even tell you, I used to flip houses too, renovate houses, and I apprenticed as an electrician and apprenticed as a plumber, and I used to do every trade from masonry all the way up. And so when I apprenticed electrician, the screw heads on the caps, the screws, right, they want them all the same way, but do you put them horizontal or vertical? No, they collect dust, right? Really? So all the screws are vertical so they don't collect dust. Anyhow, with that said, that's a subtle detail that you may or may not perceive, but there adds a precision to that. So I would, when you put your screws in, line them all up one way or another. That's a level of detail that people are going to perceive. And when I worked at Wendell's, these are the levels that we were working with. I mean, I had one guy sand a chair for 30 days. Just think about that, 30, it has to be perfectly smooth. And if it's a hump, that's easy, scrape that down. But if there's a dip, the whole thing's got to be faired out. Try doing that with black walnut end grain like that chair he was sitting in. So that, so these subtle details it takes it to a whole nother level. But yeah, this is really, really nice, very, very nice work. I would also maybe look into some other materials, like a mother of pearl, very easy to work with, cuts like a gem, pun intended. Silver is easy to work with, and again, it's that extra little. Don't get me wrong, this is a beautiful piece, but it's all wood. It's like just lots of wood, and you have some brass, great. But if you added some other extra little touches, you don't need a lot. It's like, whoa, ooh, silver inlay, wow, Next slide. Oh yeah, Reichhold? What's it called? What's that guy who did this chair? Yes, that guy too, German, right? This is fun. What kind of wood is this? Walnut? Wow. Red? Okay. I don't know how you would do this, and you probably thought about it, trying to make all this line up.
Yeah, the story is that thing plagued me forever. I've had that thing for years, and I never knew what I wanted to do. I didn't want to just make a slab of this or something like
Yeah.
that. I said, right, I saw something that made me think I'm going to fold it. So I folded it and just let it be what it was.
It's a great piece, and I love the elongated dovetails here. What I might suggest is you're almost at a single entry. I don't know if you know single entry, where the tail here, instead of having any width at all, you come in with your dovetail saw and it goes down to nothing. Because nowadays a lot of people are making dovetails with the router jig and all that, and you can tell it's machine made. The only dovetail that can't be machine made, if you do a single entry, you can't do that's a handmade joint, and you're driving that home. So if that came down to a point, that would be a nice level that, like, whoa. I mean, although that's elongated, you couldn't do that with a machine anyhow. But
That's right. I tried for 2 weeks to jig that thing. I lost.
No.
I agree. That would have been nice, but I had to cut my losses.
Yeah. No, I think it's a nice piece. Very nice. And oil finish, or?
Yeah, it's just oil and wax.
Yeah. Very nice. Oh yeah, curved work. Wow. How is this? Is this curved here? Or is it that back joint? Is that a straight, or is that's not a compound curve? Is it? No. Just straight. And how is that joined? This is a coffee table, or a bench?
There's solid wood as coffee table, solid wood embedded in the bottom of the top part and the back of the thing, and screwed, and the bottom screwed into that.
So, but this is 3/4 of an inch, and it's a coffee table, right?
Yes.
And that's a bent lamination?
Yeah.
Okay. So one concern is, because even that first coffee table I showed you, the very first one, A lot of people think it's a bench. And you'd be surprised how many people sit on that and not. Now, for me, it's not a problem. My only concern on this is someone can't handle the weight, right? On that joint, I would be concerned about the structural integrity of that.
Could not sit on it.
Right.
It will hold a heavy sculpture.
Oh, good. Well, that's great. Yeah, this is a great piece. Well, I don't know what else you book matched. So 2 things I would comment. The photograph, okay. Representing your work is really important if you're going to go that route. So you really need to get good photographs or get good at Photoshop. So the background right in the top right corner, that bothers me. Now, in Photoshop, you could easily, the snow's kind of cool. You could clone out that dark spot there, and this top, as I said, bothers me. You could either clone that, but what I would suggest, well, I would clone it out and then I'd put a gradient behind that, going from gray, blending into the white. That would make this photograph pop a little more. I do like the shadow. I think that's great. So the quality of your photograph is a whole other art form in itself. And with Photoshop these days, it's really easy to do that. I don't know if you guys give a Photoshop course. That actually would be a good, I might suggest that for, or SketchUp. Some of these fundamental programs are very, very powerful and can make your work really stand out. I don't know if you experimented with, this edge. I like the minimal side of that. Maybe you curve it in. There's nothing else I can think about. Yeah, no, great piece. Really nice, very elegant. Oh, wow, look at this one. Boy. Is this like an incense burner, the purpose of this top that's pierced? What's,
Yeah, it's pierced.
I know it's pierced, but,
That's Mark Loeb's.
huh?
That's Mark Loeb's piece. I don't know where Mark is.
He ran away. Yeah.
I'm right here.
Oh, okay. So I'm just curious of what the function of the piercing through into the cabinet is. Is there a function?
It's a double pierce. There's a flat surface of piercing under that dome.
Right.
And there's a dome piercing, and inside of there is a vintage key. There's a door key.
Mm-hmm.
And it unlocks. It's meant to unlock the secret of life.
Ah, woo, boy. Wait, let me get my hip waders on. Yeah, I like.
2 bottles of absinthe to figure it out.
Nice. No, that's a beautiful piece. I love the discovery aspect of it. It's always nice. Like if you do these drawer, you do a desk or something with a drawer or even doors. When you open the doors up, hit them with something else. If it's all cherry. Oh, I'm anticipating when I open the door cherry, and switch it to walnut or gold leaf the inside, or put a piece of leather in there, or something for them to discover. That's gonna then suddenly they gotta open. They gotta look through the whole piece. Then they're sucked in, right? So I love the seahorses in there, mother of pearl, fantastic. Are those leather bottomed on the side little cubbies?
Well, there are 6 slide-out drawers with copper and pierced bottom.
Yeah. So I'm going to open every single drawer now. I want to. This is great. But the sense of discovery is really good. Like Mies van der Rohe, right? Our famous architect. Less is more. Okay. Scott Grove. More is more. So this is a more is more piece. Sometimes, if you're not sure, some people might say, "Oh, it's too busy." Yeah, go for it. If you make it so busy, then it's like a velvet Elvis. It's so bad it's good kind of thing. I mean, this is really busy and it's so good. I would be sticking my head in that cabinet, looking for everything. I want to pull every drawer out. I want to see every piece. Then I would be inclined. What's the bottom of the? Really. Fuck with them and do something crazy. Put, gold leaf on the bottom of the underside so people really, not everybody's going to get it. until if someone has, the means enough to stick their head under there and go, whoa, this bottom is gold leafed, or something, or the mirror, I don't know, the infinity life. But, you've added an element of curiosity for me that I'm going to scour this piece to find all these little gems and, all these little things that you've done. Great piece. Love it. Is that backup one? Is this chipped glass? Hot glue chipped glass, or just
Sorry?
the type of glass? Is that hot glue chipped glass?
It's, the center is chipped glass and the outside is water glass,
Excellent.
copper foil.
There's copper foil on this glass. Oh no, this is copper foil, but there's not any. This is all clear glass.
Foil stained glass.
Yeah, if you take hot glue chipped glass and silver leaf the back of it, it will blow you away. It'll give you this texture that is like, what is this? Like, wow. So you can buy, you probably see in restaurants, it's glass that looks like ferns. It has this texture on it on one side, and how it's done is you take glass, you sandblast it, you take low adhesion hide glue, and you pour that on there, and then you go through a series of evaporation and drying processes, and as the glue dries, it pops a layer of the glass off, and it makes it look like frosted ferns on a window. It's really, really cool. And then again, you take that to another level, and if you silver leaf it, I've done gold and copper, but silver gives it this three-dimensional quality that really makes it look crazy. And then if you want to take it a step further than that, then you sand it so that all the peaks are sanded with little clear lines, so it looks like one thing, and then if you put a light on it for like a bar top, then you turn the light on, and then it turns into this like lightning, pattern of light coming through. But it's just another one of these really cool texture material, like, wow, what is that? I don't even know. So, give it a try, but more is more. So that would be fun to play that. So you can buy 1/4" hot glue. You bought that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can buy 1/4" at most glass shops. It's great. I make it myself when I go for counters and tabletops. You have to chip your own, but it's also, if you have a glass tabletop, it also hides scratches, because all glass eventually is scratched. So it's on the bottom side, the top side is smooth, and you have this wonderful fern pattern underneath. It's kind of cool. So, next slide. Oh yeah. Oh, Da Vinci Code.
Yes, cryptex.
Yes. Does it really work?
Yes.
No way. Wow. Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. So let's see. I'm thinking that maybe the burl for me isn't a fit aesthetically. I see this sort of precision cryptex sort of thing, and then there's this sort of natural element. Now, maybe you're shooting for the dichotomy between the two.
Shooting for seabed. You always find
Oh.
3 and 4s on the bottom of the ocean.
Okay. Then it works. Now I understand the reasoning. But wow, these little dots, are those holes drilled in, or is that a little dowel kind of glued?
They're there to indicate where things
The
are in a
alignment.
certain place. One above,
Sure.
one above the
So that's one where I might have gone with like mother of pearl or silver, just that element, that little element of accent. Maybe the rim also, maybe that's silver or gold leaf. If anybody's done gold leafing is relatively easy, but on that I would water gild. So that's actually the original. That's done with high glue and boule, which is clay. And when you rub it, I'm sure we've all seen when you go into churches and you see these statues or frames that look like liquid gold, like solid gold. It's not solid gold, it's water gilded. So when you take a piece of like tin foil and you rub it with a penny when you're a kid, it becomes super smooth and super shiny. That's basically what you're doing with gold leaf. And you apply a clay, which is called boule coating, which is soft enough. Then you apply the leaf with hide glue and liquor, and you take an agate, which is a stone that's just soft enough, and when you rub it, you're burnishing the gold leaf, and it turns like liquid gold. It's like night and day between regular gold leaf and water gilded gold leaf, and it's you know, it's something that they don't really teach here. New York City, you can get from Sepp Leaf. I think they teach it, but we do it in Scotland. It's a lost art. It really is. But you know, maybe that around. Although that might make it a little too on the hot. That might be too much. But you know, little accents of metal or stone. I encourage everybody to just add those little touches, which take it to another level.
Richard's wife wouldn't let him have a jewel.
Right, melting down the engagement ring. Oh, hey, that's my work. How'd you get that? You know, you're messing with me. So there's my again, board, you know, taking balloons and filling with food coloring and all the ice. Right, you guys must have icicle issues here, right? You get these 6-foot icicles off your house, break them off, and you stick them in a snow blanket and then fill balloons up and set them on. I even did a snow angel. We did a snow angel, and then I lined it with plastic and then filled that with water, and then stood that up and had a life-size snow angel out of ice. So, yeah. So you can see, we had this stuff all over the yard. But that's funny. Okay. There we go. Nice job, guys. Thank you for the courage to submit. I know it's not easy.